Welcome back, everybody. We are at the last talk of this first day at the Starts Urban Festival. We have had a super day and we are closing with a super guest. The title of this talk is An Urban and Green Future for Our Post-Pandemic Cities. And we open the mic to Carlo Ratti. Carlo Ratti doesn't need presentation, but I still will do it for the few that don't know who Professor Ratti is. Professor Ratti teaches at MIT, where he directs the Sensible City Lab, and is a founding partner at the International Design and Innovation Office Carlo Ratti Associati. In the last decade, Ratti's work has been exhibited in international venues, including the Venice Biennale, the New York MoMA, the London Science Museum, and Barcelona's Design Museum. And is currently serving as a co-chair of the World Economic Forum Global Council on the Future of Cities and Urbanization. So specifically the topic we are tackling today. How do we imagine the city of the future? Will it be more green? Will it be more climate friendly? Carlo Ratti will present some of the innovation trends affecting our urban environment, and he will explore for us how the pandemic has changed our way of living and how is going to change our future living. I leave the floor to Carlo Ratti, and then after the presentation, we will close the day. Thank you.
Right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you can all see and hear me. I'm going to share my screen, so you'll see in a moment. I thought the best way to look at this issue about post-pandemic and how cities will be to answer a question which doesn't have a solution yet, which is how will the office change post-COVID-19? So, how are we going to live post-COVID-19? Are we going to keep on working from home? Are we going to continue living in cities where a lot of commuting and a lot also travel generally has evaporated, or are we going to go back to before the pandemic? So, I want to share with you just a few thoughts. But, really, let's find out about this using data. Now, I want to start by showing you an op-ed, an editorial I did in the Harvard Business Review a few years ago. And, the title they gave was, "If work is digital, why do we still go to the office?" But the point that the article made was that, even if we can do a lot of things digitally, there's still a very important reason for going to the office. In order to understand it, we really need to go back to the basic principles of planning and to the principle of modernism in the 20th century. This is Le Corbusier, one of the most celebrated French architects, in 1931, together with a group called CIAM, which is Congrès International d'Architecture Moderne, so the International Congress of Modern Architecture. He wrote the so-called Athens Charter. One of the things they were arguing for was that, that when we plan a new city, we need to separate very clearly all the different functions: dwelling, work, recreation, and transportation. But if you do that, you get to a city like what you see here to the left, a city where, all these different neighborhoods are separated. Incidentally, we're working now, our office is working now in Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. We're doing one of the major extensions to the master plan of Brasilia, where the master plan of Brasilia by Oscar Niemeyer and Lucio Costa was actually inspired a lot by the Charter thing. But, when you're doing this, as I was saying, you're creating different cities, you're creating, say, during the day or during the night. So not a very exciting city. So since the 1960s, 70s, and so on, many people started thinking about a different approach, really mixed-use development. Jane Jacobs and many others, the idea that you put many functions and you juxtapose them in the same neighborhood. But today, since 2000, with the digital revolution, we think we're getting into a new level, into a new space, which is exactly what we lived through during the pandemic. The fact we can actually overlap different functions on the same space. And it is really changing the way we can define private in public space, as you see on this image, and also the very structure of the buildings we inhabit. But as I told you at the very beginning, let's look at this with data. And so I want to take you on a little tour of the MIT campus. What you see here is Boston from the sky. You see Boston downtown to the right over here. You can see MIT like a small city inside the city. By the way, that's the Charles River. Yeah.
Carlo, sorry, we are not seeing your slides. Can you try again to share them?
Oh, very interesting. I've shown 10 of them already. Strange. Okay,
yeah.
let me. Actually, you know what? Because we tried it before with Safari, but then you asked me, okay, there's a problem then. We tried before with Safari, but then okay, maybe now it will work. But then we changed to Chrome, so it's probably what happened. Okay, let me go back. Okay, sorry about that. And then I hope, I don't want to redo the full thing, but I'll just start from this, where you see Boston downtown, and you see MIT like a small city inside the city, and you see the Charles River in the middle. The MIT campus has always been like a bit like a test bed. And so in the early 2000s, it was the first campus actually globally to be totally covered by Wi-Fi. And that produced a very interesting change. People used to work in front of a computer, like you see there to the left, chained to a desktop. And now we work, like you see there to the right. And the same thing is what we've been seeing all over the world. We used to work like this. This is actually Jacques Tati making fun of cubicles in the movie Playtime. But, today we work more like this, in a much more informal, communal, collaborative, social and sociable way. By the way, this is actually our design that has been built in Milan for one of the largest co-working places in Southern Europe for Talent Garden. So somehow, how can we actually better understand the changes? And as I said, we can do that through big data. What you see here is all the access points on the MIT campus. We can then go and look at the data from every access point. So what you see here is really how many people you have in every point of the campus during the day, 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and so on, all the way till the evening. The size of the bubble is the amount of people that you have. And this really opens up a new chapter. This is you can find a lot of scientific articles on our website. This was more like a popular science article in the Financial Times magazine. But basically, this is opening up through mapping of human movement a new dimension in order to understand architecture and urban planning. And you can get different type of data. For instance, what you see here is the overall, call it heartbeat of MIT. You see people getting to campus on Monday morning around 9 a.m. You see a few people leaving at 5 p.m. Most people still working till late at night. Even in the middle of the night, a lot of activity, and the same happens on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Not on Friday, where activity slips away quickly in the afternoon. And then on Saturday and Sunday, you get almost like 2 normal days. Just, you remove the 9 to 5ers, and you got 2 normal days. It's something quite fun that every Sunday night, you got the little dent, as I'm pointing with my mouse. It's a little dent. It's between 9 and 10 p.m. in the evening. And that's when you say, oh my God, tomorrow is Monday again. And you remember all the different things that you haven't yet done before the beginning of the new week. By the way, can you hear and see the slides well now?
Yes, perfect.
I saw that somehow when I started sharing the slides, the camera went off. So I'll turn on the camera as well again. But then you can do the same thing for every room. So for every room, or for every, if you want tomorrow, every square meter, every square foot, you can actually look at this, how many people you have, and then you analyze all this big data. Again, you can do different things. Here is a simple Fourier transform. You look at frequencies. You can look at different types to cluster the data. Something that's quite interesting. As you see here, it's exactly what I was telling you at the beginning. This map of the MIT campus probably 10 or 20 years ago would have had very precise colors or separated from each other. But now everything is getting mixed, which is really what we lived through during the pandemic. The fact that, we use our offices for other functions, we use our kitchens, our apartments for working, as offices. So we've been hybridizing a lot of the spaces. Somehow the traditional asset classes that real estate people are familiar with are kind of disappearing and blurring into each other. And then, you can also look at other interesting things. You can look at productivity, papers and patents. You can look at different communities. So with data, you can look at all of this. So somehow this is big data to understand how we use the space of the campus and more generally, how a large organization like a university, or you could apply the same to a company, works. But really, let's look then at COVID-19. And the interesting thing is that before COVID-19, we were collecting not only the data I showed you before, but also additional data. So additional data, which is anonymized data from the email exchange on the MIT campus. So we don't know what people are sending to each other, but we know that different people are connected. And here you see the email data set to the left, thousands of people on the MIT campus, and this tells us a lot of things. Here you see a quick description of the data set. And then, COVID happened. We started collecting this data at the end of 2018 and then, the end of 2019. And then in early 2020, COVID arrived to the United States, to Italy. And somehow, that becomes almost like a sociological experiment, because we can remove one variable, physical space, and see what happens to the way we connect and communicate with other people. And so we've been using the email network MIT to understand, really the impact of the lack of physical interaction on the communication network. So what you see here is actually 2020. You see January, February, all the way till May. You see before COVID emergency, for instance, and then you see on the 23rd of March last year, when the MIT campus was closed. And then let's go and look at what happened. First of all, before COVID, this was kind of the network of how people would communicate and exchange information with each other. You see here different ways to represent the networks, different type of clusterings. Here you see all the different schools, you see these kind of clusters are the School of Engineering, Science, Architecture, and so on. And then we get COVID, so there's no physical space. And just by plotting this, forget about analytics. This is just big data visualization. You see there's a difference. You see that just, the same visualization algorithms show the network in a different light, cast it in a different light as you see here. So what has changed? In order to see what has changed, I want to tell you briefly about a very important sociological theory, which is a theory about weak ties developed by Mark Granovetter back in 1973. Mark Granovetter at the time was at Johns Hopkins University. Now he's a professor at Stanford. I think he's in his 80s now. But basically, in the strength of weak ties, he argued that it is very important in our social and communication networks to have weak ties and not only strong ties. Well, let me tell you first what are weak ties and strong ties. So think about all your friends. Here you have, the nodes, the little circles are people. And a link, a connection, is a connection to a friend, somebody you know. You can classify your friends into categories. One category is strong ties. You look at the blue links here, is one person, you have one node, one person, say person A, as I'm showing with the mouse, person B, and A and B also know each other. So if you plot this, it's like a triangle. So is friends, our friends who are also friends with each other. But then you got other, this is just a definition, you got other links that, sociologists and Mark Granovetter call weak ties. And weak ties means, that you connect with somebody, you might be talking to that person a lot. It doesn't need to be a weak link that you don't interact much. You can have a lot of interaction, but that person is not a friend of your friends. It's actually more like a bridge into a new community. Well, then when you look at this and analyze the network, again, here is the big data. By the way, I'm showing you published. I'm very excited with the results, so I want to share with you. Take it with a pinch of salt. We are still validating some of the findings, but we are quite confident with them. You see here a lot of the analytics, and what you discover is actually that weak ties are disappearing when you remove physical space. So when you remove physical space, we talk a lot to people we already know. We talk a lot to people we already know who are friends of our friends, to our closely knit community. But we meet much less those people who are weak ties are very important, like Granovetter proved in his paper or showed in his paper, and many others. The Granovetter paper has been cited over 30,000 times, so there's a lot of literature looking at this kind of strong tie, weak tie hypothesis. And what you see here, for instance, is the number of new weak ties emerging on the MIT campus, and that's before the 23rd of March 2020, when the MIT campus was shut down. For a few weeks before that already, we started not using the campus much. We were working from home a lot. So you see, these were new ties were 250 per day before COVID lockdown. And then, they went down to like 50. So that's a huge, huge reduction, 80% reduction in the number of weak ties. And so this leads me to think that we need to go back to our offices, at least for parts of the week. Maybe not all of the week. We want to keep the flexibility we have been enjoying during COVID. But that is really an interesting part, because what you see here, which is another visualization that shows you, how the total network was in February, in April, and in June, and all the way to February 2021, how, you see this is almost like a brain losing connections and shrinking, and, almost like atrophy appearing. And so, unless we go back to physical space, our social and communication networks are going to suffer. Again, in a nutshell, so I want to share this with you because it's very related to sustainability, it's very related to life in cities post-COVID. We believe that we will need to go back to our offices, maybe only half of the week, maybe just a few days per week. But the physical space is very important because that's how we nurture those weak ties that are so important in our networks. And I will finish here. Thank you.
Wow, so many insights. Thanks a lot, Professor Ratti. It's true that we are going to go back to live when we go back to work. And thanks again. I will close today if there's no questions from the audience. It was an overwhelming day in terms of suggestions, ideas, insights throughout the whole day. I remind you all about tomorrow's program, which will be streamed from the OGR in Torino, and will start at 9:40 a.m. and you can check it out on www.startsurbanfest.eu. I thank again for the amazing 20 minutes presentation, Professor Ratti, and see you tomorrow in Torino, eventually live. Thanks a lot.